Hey everybody. So today I'm going to do part two of the Solitude video that I was watching from Psychology Research Lab. I was watching a little bit more of it today and I'll caption some more and have some reactions to it. But I was thinking about yesterday, and one of the topics, as I was talking about solitude, one of the topics that I elaborated on had to do with maybe being bothered by people in society asking, when are you going to find someone? When are you going to be in a relationship? When are you going to get married? To tell you the truth, that hasn't happened to me a whole lot. And I asked myself, does that really bother me when people do that? And the truth is, it doesn't that much. It maybe did more so in the past. And if it does now, it's more because it bothers me because it bothered me in the past, and maybe my influence from society was too strong in making me be in a relationship in the past. Well, it's not only that. I mean, in my younger days, I did want to be in a relationship more. It had to do with a biological need as well as insecurities, lots of reasons, but the societal pressure added to that. And maybe at times when I was single, I kind of felt that pressure from society too. And I feel like part of me being in a relationship was to impress society at times when I was younger. Now it doesn't bother me. And I've also learned that when a married person asks me something like, why aren't you married? Or when are you going to get married? It's typically somebody who either has their whole identity wrapped up in their spouse. And to me, that looks pathetic, honestly, or they haven't been married for very long. So typically people who have been married for a long time, sometimes I they come to me and they tell me that they envy my life, basically. I had a close friend recently who is married who told me that, basically, man, I wish I had your life. So I don't know. I tend to feel more sorry for married people the way that they have felt sorry for me in the past. I know that sounds kind of condescending, but I'm just being honest. Anyway, that's what I was thinking about. When I was expressing this in my head, it went better than it just did in the video. I wish I could get more comfortable with the camera, like talking to a friend. So that's what I'm working on now. Anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and start captioning, and I will stop and elaborate and react when I feel it's appropriate. And we left off with abundance versus scarcity in part one. We talked about that toward the end. So I won't get back into that again. Well, maybe just briefly, I'll say that when we view love as abundant, our lives are a lot less stressful. The people who are best at being alone are often the best at being relationships because they choose partners for abundance rather than scarcity. That's where we left off. Living alone builds self-reliance in ways that compound over time. When you are the only person responsible for your time, you learn to cook, clean, manage finances, handle emergencies, make decisions, solve problems, and navigate the world with confidence. These skills create a deep sense of competence and independence that carries over into every area of life. People who have lived alone for extended periods often describe a quiet confidence that comes from knowing that they can handle whatever life throws at them. There is also the question of identity. In romantic relationships, people naturally begin to merge their identities with their partners. They adopt shared hobbies, mutual friends, common routines. They gradually compromise on their individual preferences to maintain harmony. This is a normal and often positive process, but it can also lead to a loss of self After a long relationship ends, many people describe feeling like they don't know who they are anymore because they spent years defining themselves in relation to another person. Single people don't face this particular challenge. Their identity remains their own, shaped entirely by their own choices, experiences, interests, and values. They know what they like because they chose it themselves, not because a partner introduced it to them. They know what kind of life feels right because they designed it according to their own specifications. And that is so true. I think it's one of the things I enjoy about being single or singlehood is that I feel so free. I've been in relationships and I've been single, and a lot of times when I was single, I didn't really truly enjoy that the way that I could have and the way that I do now, because it's so nice to not have anyone to answer to. And I wonder sometimes if this is even a problem with our generation, because I think a lot of times by this age we've got it all figured out. And I don't know, I'm speaking to you as if you were the old me, like as if you still have a problem with this, because I want to help you if you do. And I hope that's what I can do as I'm talking through this. But it's so nice to have that freedom to not have somebody to answer to be able to live my life the way I want to live it. And I can say right now, I'm completely shocked at how full my days are, because I may have mentioned this before, but I was kind of blindsided by an autoimmune disease when I moved to Vegas last August. So I've been here about a year now. And I had to get on prednisone for about 3 months. So I prepared everything in my condo so that I didn't have to leave too much at all, because prednisone, as you may know, it really compromises your immune system. And with the autoimmune issues I was having anyway, I just really couldn't be around people uh, for quite some time. So I was trying to be real careful, because if I would have gotten sick, I would have had to get off the meds, and then my other autoimmune issues would have flared up. Maybe I'll get into more details about that in another episode. But the thing is, as I've grown older, I've found ways to keep myself occupied and enjoyed my life more being single than I did in relationships. I still love having friends, but the fact that now my days are so full with things like playing this guitar, just starting these 2 YouTube channels that I started kind of tops it off, and working out. I set up my home gym and I'm not sacrificing on that. Now, I just had surgery a couple weeks ago, a little over 2 weeks ago, and I went back to the doctor yesterday, in fact. And surprisingly, he cleared me to work out already. So today's the first day I actually had a leg workout. It wasn't a big one. It was, of course, it was mostly a body weight leg workout, but it feels so good to finally get back to that. And my my sense of pleasure has refocused into things that just improve me as a human being. Like working out is, I'm so grateful that I'm able to do that, because with my autoimmune disease, I I don't know how long I will be able to do that. And it's it can get challenging thinking about that sometimes, but it really gives me a lot of pleasure to be able to do that now, because I don't take that for granted anymore. And just between, I don't know where the hours go sometimes. I feel like I'm moving in slow motion, but that's okay. I've pretty much decided that I'm not going to work anymore. Luckily, I've made some good decisions in my past, so I shouldn't have to. Um, and I shouldn't say never, because if something comes up and I get this killer job offer, but I'm not really looking, and I've just gotten so used to not having somebody to answer to and being able to do things my way. And I suspect that's more common with people in our generation. From what I've noticed, we become more comfortable with our solitude as we get older. That's all I'll say about that for now. I think it comes up a little bit later in the video too, and maybe I'll elaborate a little more when it does. Clarity of self-knowledge is not a consolation prize for being single. It's a genuine psychological advantage that many coupled people envy. The belief that you are incomplete without a partner is one of the most toxic ideas in modern culture. Happy single people don't subscribe to this belief. They understand that wholeness comes from within, from self-knowledge, self-acceptance, self-respect, and the cultivation of a life that aligns with their authentic values. Psychological health is not the state of having another person fill your emotional gaps. It is the state of being a whole functioning person who may choose to share their life with someone else but does not require it. If having a partner automatically solved loneliness and created lasting happiness, then everyone in a relationship would be happy, and they're not. Millions of people in marriages and long-term partnerships are anxious, lonely, unfulfilled, and quietly desperate. Many stay in relationships that have long since stopped working because they're more afraid of being alone than of being unhappy. The courage to be single, to face the world without the social armor of a relationship, is undervalued precisely because it is so difficult in a culture that pathologizes solitude. The financial benefits of single life are also worth noting, although they are rarely discussed. In a relationship, financial decisions become shared decisions. Spending patterns, savings goals, investment strategies, and lifestyle choices must be negotiated between two people, and they may have very different financial values. So, this is something that I have struggled with. I would say pretty much all of my adult relationships have ended because of money. And that's, I kind of figured out why that is, though. It's because I tend to choose women who are more nurturing and feminine because those are qualities that I like. It's a personal preference. But typically, women with those traits are not very good with money. And so I've had to, me living like a minimalist and wanting to not work as much and not, I guess, to have more freedom. That's one of the things that I feel I want to buy with money is freedom instead of more material things. I like to just buy time, if that makes sense, and take time off work and not have to work so much. But when I'm in a relationship with someone, not only do I spend more money on things because my life becomes more pleasure focused, like you're eating out, you're doing things that, for me, I should say, I'm eating out more, doing things that are more pleasure focused and convenient to be able to spend more time with this other person. And if that person is not only not able to pay for anything, but also needs help with her own bills and things like that, that's been quite common in the relationships that I've been in. And so I had to make a decision of whether to stay in the relationship and work harder myself, make more money, and not be as free so that I could take care of myself and this other person, and maybe not necessarily fully support this other person, but to give her some help. This has happened on more than one occasion. I've chosen to end those relationships, and there's more to it than that. I wouldn't say that it's just quite that simple, but that is the main reason that, like I said, my adult relationships have ended is because of money, and it feels so much better to be free to not have to worry about someone else's needs. And the flip side of that is, I guess, women who are good with money typically are not the type of women that I would want to be with in a relationship either. Because in order for a woman to be successful in the workforce, there's generally certain personality traits that go with that. Not always, I'm generalizing, of course, that make that would make that person not preferable for me to be in a relationship with them. So that's kind of a dilemma too, of in choosing a partner. If I'm going to choose someone, am I going to choose someone who is not so good with money but is more nurturing and feminine and has these other characteristics that go along with that, or to choose someone who is good with money but is maybe not so good in a relationship with me? And of course I would choose the first type, because I would rather be with someone who's not so good with money but is good with other things, to has other personality traits that I can connect with, put it that way. So anyway, we'll get back to the video. Single people maintain strategies and, sorry, I skipped back a little bit there. Lifestyle has to be negotiated between two people, basically. Single people maintain control over their financial lives. They can save aggressively, invest boldly, spend freely, or live frugally according to their own preferences without negotiation or resentment. They can take career risks, moving to a new city, starting a business, accepting a lower paying job that offers more fulfillment without considering the impact on a partner's career or comfort. This financial autonomy enables a kind of life flexibility that coupled people often cannot access without significant relationship strain. As people age, the relationship between solitude and satisfaction becomes even more interesting. There's a phenomenon that nearly everyone experiences, but few people talk about openly: the gradual desire to spend less time with other people as you get older. You start screening your calls. When someone knocks on the door, you may instinctively lower the television volume and pretend you're not home. A friend texts asking to hang out, and instead of excitement, you feel a wave of exhaustion. Maybe you've been through this before. I'm kind of embarrassed to say. I I've changed so much from when I was younger, in that I used to get mad when people would cancel plans, but now I hope people cancel plans. Like if I made plans with somebody to go out, I'm hoping that it gets canceled. And that may sound like a horrible thing to say, if, or maybe you agree with me, but I love my friends and my family, but I just sometimes just a lot of time, most of the time, I just rather be home, and I don't need to interact with them for a long time like I used to, because I think as we get older, we know how the conversations are going to go. Basically, there's not anything different. There's not anything that's novel that we haven't seen so much. That sounds kind of depressing, but it's just, I don't have a fear of socializing. It's more that I mean, at this point, I don't feel like I even need to do it. And I don't do it much at all these days because of my situation. But even in the past, I felt like I got enough of a social life from work. And when I'm home, there's just so many things. There are hobbies that I want to do to improve myself. And I will admit, I'm making myself sound like too good, I guess, when I say that, because sometimes it's just passive pleasure. I just want to sit and watch YouTube videos or something like that, which I'm trying to be more of a creator than a consumer, because it's a different kind of pleasure. It just takes a while to get used to. I'm trying to get comfortable with this. But in the past, I guess I would just rather just sit home and watch a show or something than go out and meet up with a friend and deal with everything outside of my home. I don't know. Maybe you feel the same way. Maybe you're on the other side of that and don't like to have friends that don't want to go out and maybe cancel plans just because they want to stay home because it doesn't sound like a legitimate reason. It's not that you dislike people, it's that interacting with them has become significantly more draining than it used to be. If you recognize yourself in this description, there's nothing wrong with you. This is one of the most well documented psychological changes associated with aging, and it happens for several interconnected reasons. The first is a dramatic decline in tolerance for things that don't matter. When you were young, you had enormous capacity for enduring uncomfortable social situations, awkward small talk, gossip, people who talk endlessly about themselves, family conflicts that go nowhere, jokes that aren't funny. But decades of exposure to these experiences gradually depletes that tolerance. At some point, your mind sends a clear signal: enough. You stop forcing laughter at unfunny jokes. You stop engaging with opinions that make no sense. You stop attending gatherings that drain you. This is not antisocial behavior, it is self preservation. You've learned to identify emotional noise and you have finally given yourself permission to filter it out. I'm going to say this too, that even with close friends, well, I'm thinking of people in particular that were, or maybe a person in particular that was more than a friend. You start to recognize patterns. I tend to be friends with my exes after the relationship is over because my relationships haven't ended badly. It's just we go our separate ways and we end up not hating each other. And so we tend to continue to be friends, and that's usually okay. But even as friends, sometimes I start to just get tired of these patterns that as you get older, you start to recognize patterns in people's behaviors. And living with someone will make you recognize them really quickly, obviously. And once you see these patterns, you can't unsee them. And it's unfortunate that we have to sometimes I feel like it's better off if we don't see these patterns and just keep our distance from people. But you see these patterns that are hard to ignore and hard to not say anything about when you're even just with a friend having coffee and then the friend says something that is just, you can see through their motivations, through their dilemmas. And when I can see that, maybe I'm wrong, but I can't be convinced that I'm wrong once I see a pattern like that. So getting out and socializing causes familiarity breeds contempt. So you're getting closer to this person and you're starting to see patterns that maybe are not so pleasant. And I have my own patterns. I know that. Don't get me wrong. And they're not all healthy. So it's just, it sounds kind of judgmental to say that about other people and to not want to change myself. But patterns work for me. I mean, I'm single. I'm staying single. So, hey. Priority shift. The questions you ask yourself change fundamentally. Instead of wondering how to be more popular or how to fill your calendar, you start asking, how much energy do I actually have today? Who makes me feel at ease? Who drains me? Who can I genuinely trust? The metric for evaluating relationships shifts from quantity to quality, from excitement to peace. You choose people and commitments based on how calm they make you feel, not how busy they keep you. You start preferring meaningful conversations over meaningless chatter, people who try to understand you over people who merely tolerate you. And when those people aren't available, you choose quiet solitude over forced socializing. This is not loneliness. This is wisdom. Loss also plays a role that is difficult to talk about, but impossible to ignore. As you age, people leave your life. Friends drift away. Loved ones pass on. Relationships that once felt permanent gradually thin and dissolve. Your social world shrinks, sometimes without you even noticing. And some people have no desire to rebuild what has been lost. This is not depression and it is not giving up. It is a natural response to the growing awareness that time is finite. When you truly understand that your days are numbered, you become extraordinarily selective about how you spend them. I think that a lot of my socializing was going to things that I had control of. Uh, as I had gotten older, for instance, I'm extremely codependent. And that might be hard to believe for people who don't know me uh, intimately, I would say. And it's crazy thing. I used to work in my last job was at a residential rehab for people with drug addictions and trauma, childhood trauma and stuff like that. Best job I ever had. I worked there for 3 years, and it was great. But one day, one of the residents that were there started asking me some questions about a codependency quiz. And I never, before that, never thought of myself as being codependent because I had set my life up to where, I mean, as I said, I think in part one when I was talking, I typically had chosen women who were more insecure than me because I hated that feeling of my attachment style can go either way depending on the person that I'm with. And I absolutely hated that feeling of having an anxious attachment style and being the insecure one. So I chose people that were more anxious than me typically. And if anything, I would be most of the time the avoidant one in the relationship. So I didn't always look too codependent when I'm with someone who is more anxious. However, when I took this quiz, I realized I started digging a little deeper and realized that, yeah, it's a pretty powerful thing to realize. And I started attending Codependence Anonymous meetings, and being able to socialize with people there was great because I could go to meetings when I wanted to and I didn't always have to. And it was those types of meetings where everything you say stays in there. It's a confidentiality agreement, just like Alcoholics Anonymous or anything else, Narcotics Anonymous, anything like that. But that would help me to socialize, and I had some control over it. And I don't know exactly where I was going with this, but I think the biggest part for me of being codependent is, and it only happened in relationships, in certain kinds of relationships, because I I was never codependent with my friends and or family. Basically, it might have been different if I didn't grow up as an only child. I didn't have, so I have a little brother now who's 22 years younger than me, and it's great because I got to grow up an only child, and now I have a little brother as a companion, somebody who's who's younger than me. I don't have any kids of my own, so it's nice having a little brother. I don't have to take care of him, but he's can be in some ways like a son too. But anyway, I digress. Basically, I kind of just lost my train of thought there. But being addicted to people is in relationships is that's how I would get. So me basically staying out of relationships is like an alcoholic staying away from alcohol too, in a way. I'm going to wrap it up there. It's kind of, I feel uneasy, but I feel like if I go further, we're right at 30 minutes. If I go further, that I could ramble into something that will be harder to wrap up. And I don't want to disclose everything. I would like to, I don't know. I just feel like I want to end there. And I'm still getting, like I said, still getting more comfortable with the camera. And I hope to, my goal here is to be able to talk to the camera like I'm talking to a friend, basically, and having basically a one on one conversation and not stammering all over my words and my thoughts. So, anyway, thanks so much for listening. If you got this far, please like the video, and comments or questions are welcome. See you next time.